I will not stand by and watch you treat all mages like criminal, while those who would lead us bow to their Templar jailers. How dare you speak?
Anyone who's played a BioWare game knows they're in for a treat when they boot up the game and strap in for the next 50 or so hours. You get pretty decent strategic combat, most of the time, an enthralling story filled to the brim with insane lore and interworld political conflicts, as well as a cast of delightful companions with their own motivations and storylines, and you are of course able to sleep with everyone. Anyone who's played a Dragon Age game specifically knows they get all this, plus a story that's going to be rife with religious commentary, along with race wars and just about every medieval struggle you can jam into an RPG that runs on the Xbox 360. In Dragon Age, you can play as a warrior, rogue, or a mage, pretty standard class selection for any fantasy setting, and your companions can also fall into any of these free classes. However, this is a world where your class matters. Not only your socio-economic class, which really does matter in Dragon Age, there is an insane amount of classism and elitist commentary in this game, but your character's class as well. Not only defining your moveset, your class defines your origin in-world and your story thereafter. Warriors have the best lot in life, being noble champions, loyal Templars, or ferocious reavers, and rogues also get it pretty alright, being your stock standard thieves, spies, and assassins. Mages, however, face a much tougher journey through the world of Dragon Age, as in the land of Thedas, magic is treated like a curse, an insult on the Maker, who is their god, and depending on who you ask, mages should be locked in a tower and monitored 24/7 for everyone's safety, or they should just be killed to prevent any issues. This mindset causes major problems in Dragon Age, and is a recurring theme in all the games released so far. And I just want to quickly emphasize that Veilguard finally releases this year after 10 frickin' years. As the series progresses, the situation between the mages and the Chantry, which is Dragon Age's version of the Church, becomes more and more dire, and depending on your choices throughout the game, you end up either helping the mages prevent tragedy, or you help the Chantry purge them. You're faced with this choice multiple times throughout the series, so get used to it. Your choices in Dragon Age also carry over into the next game, and the game after, most of the time, so be mindful of which side you choose, because you may just make things worse. This video will be focusing on Dragon Age 2's story in particular, with some references to Dragon Age Origins and some minor references to Dragon Age Inquisition. Please be mindful of some pretty massive spoilers for DA2 in this video, as we will be discussing the ending/endings of the game and the core struggle at the center of the storyline. There will also be a major spoiler for the Mage storyline in Dragon Age Origins, so if you intend on playing those games fresh, and I highly recommend you do, then I suggest adding this video to your watch later playlist and returning after. So, in anticipation for Veilguard's release this year, I've been replaying the entire Dragon Age series with my partner. Not my first time, but definitely their first time. And we recently finished Dragon Age Origins and then 2, and are currently playing through Inquisition at the time of this recording. The last time I played Origins was in 2019, so it's been a decent minute since I've revisited Thedas, but Origins is one of my all-time favourite games, like really high up there, possibly top 5. It is a phenomenal RPG with a rich story and a simply amazing cast of characters. Dragon Age 2 is a lot of the same, but also not. I have a harder time getting through a playthrough for 2, mainly due to the gameplay differences, as well as the cast and story just not holding up equally in comparison to Origins. But this most recent playthrough did a lot to help bring me around to this entry more than I have in the past. Dragon Age 2 is still not a perfect game, and it doesn't really hold a candle to Origins, and I'd even argue that Inquisition also stands above it, making it the weakest entry in the franchise so far, in my opinion, but Dragon Age 2 is definitely not a bad game. Dragon Age 2 is a bit rushed, but it does continue the story of Dragon Age in a big way, this time focusing on the conflict between the mages of Kirkwall and the local Templar Order. This conflict was present in Origins, but nowhere near as central to the storyline as it is here. In Kirkwall, almost everything you do has something to do with the mages or the Templars, and by extension the Chantry. So your choice in this game is to get yourself tangled up in the mages' drama, or to side with the more oppressive ideologies of the local Templars. That said, these choices are far from simple, and both the mages and Templars genuinely believe they are in the right, and they both make really good arguments for why they're right. So sit back, sip a health poultice, and cast a ward of silence on your phone. We're going to be talking about magical politics in this video, so buckle up.
Dare you speak to me? The circle has failed us, Orsino. Even you should be able to see that. The time has come to act. There can be no half measures.
Let's talk about the issue with mages. In Dragon Age, the mages are oppressed. There's no denying that. If you're spotted doing magic, you're locked up in towers with other mages known as circles. If you do magic and aren't in a circle under the constant supervision of the Templars, you're labelled an apostate and hunted until you're captured or killed. Once in the circles, mages have their blood taken and stored in phylacteries, which can be used to trace the mages if they ever happen to escape from the circles, so that they can be returned or killed, and more often than not, they end up killed. This issue is prevalent across almost the entirety of Thedas. However, it is even more strict in the city of Kirkwall, where Dragon Age 2 takes place. When you arrive, it is made clear very quickly how things run here. Mages are treated as a danger to society who cannot be left to their own devices, and the Templars maintain order. I don't have a face cam, so I hope my voice emphasized that the order was in quotation marks. As the game progresses and the story deepens, you learn more about the mages and just what danger they actually pose. The tricky thing is, they are actually dangerous, equally as dangerous as the Templars themselves. And as the story progresses, you'll find yourself coming into conflict with more and more mages regardless of your alignment in the story. Mages get their power from the Fade, a dream realm in Dragon Age, but this is also where demons and spirits reside, which are also recurring themes in the series. Mages can be enticed by demons to allow possession. We see this in the story in the form of blood mages and abominations. Blood mages derive their power from demons, usually through a deal or some kind of trick which ends up with the demon possessing them. Blood magic is very dangerous, as it requires the sacrifice of blood for power. This blood can be yours, or it can be others. And you can probably see where I'm going with this and what the issue is with blood magic. One blood mage we end up meeting becomes a companion to us, named Merrill. Don't mistake what I said earlier. Blood mages are typically evil in Dragon Age, but Merrill is the exception that proves the rule, and has a conceited belief that her blood magic is a necessary evil to achieve her goals, which themselves are somewhat noble and not evil depending on your interpretation of Merrill. Merrill is still wrong for using blood magic, putting herself at risk of possession, and later in the game, Merrill has to eat dirt because the demon who gave her the power of blood magic totally was malevolent and was definitely trying to trick her into releasing it into the world the whole time, which almost happens until you intervene and help Merrill. But what happens when a blood mage, or any mage, doesn't get your help and is possessed by a demon? Well, they turn into an abomination, a grotesque monster determined to cause suffering. There is no cure for abominations at the time of Dragon Age 2, so once a mage falls victim, they need to be killed. This is where the Templars come in, and more often than not, they do execute the abomination. There are ways to prevent demons possessing mages, but they are in a sense even worse than death, and we'll discuss them shortly in the Templar section of this video. Where the true issue lies in Kirkwall is not that the mages keep turning into demons or using blood magic. The issue is that they're left no choice. There are numerous examples throughout the game where mages are forced to resort to more extreme measures before the Templars can get them. One willingly gives herself over to a demon and turns into an abomination, and this mage was the daughter of a Templar the whole time. She knows she will die otherwise, or be made tranquil, which is really fucked, but we'll talk about that soon. So she lets the demon win, and is slain afterwards. Another example is during the Purge towards the end of the game, where the Templars decide that the mages must die, despite them being innocent of the catalyst that takes place at the end of the game. The Templars do not care, and honestly, they were looking for reasons to persecute the mages, leaving them no choice. When backed into a corner, the mages don't have much option but to resort to blood magic, or they will be killed. There is no mercy here. It's do or die. The mages are being crushed under the wheel of oppression, and there is no way out for them. The thing that's really fucked in this situation is that if they don't do blood magic, the Templars will still assume that they are blood mages anyway, or kill them just in case they become blood mages later. So the mages are left with the impossible choice: remain as they are, innocent, and be killed anyway, or submit to a demon and become a blood mage or an abomination to try and fight, and prove the Templar accusations correct and be killed anyway. So if they're back against the wall, the mages have no choice but to give in. The leader of the mages, First Enchanter Orsino, puts it best.
Look at it all. Why don't they just drown us as infants? Why wait? Why give us the illusion of hope? I refuse to keep running. I won't wait for her to kill me.
This is not helping, First Enchanter.
I am tired of helping as well. Quentin's research was too evil, too dangerous, so I put it aside. But I see now there is no other way. Meredith expects blood magic, and I will give it to her. Make her help us all.
During the climax of the game, and the final stand of the mages, Orsino looks around at the destruction caused by their conflict, and is grief-stricken. An event the mages were not at fault for has caused the total annihilation of all mages in Kirkwall, and Orsino knows the battle, and all else is lost. He says if they're going to be executed for using blood magic and abominations anyway, they might as well prove the Templars right, and Orsino allows himself to be corrupted.
What I have done is protect the people of this city time and again. What I have done is protect you mages from your curse and your own stupidity. And I will not stop doing it. I will not lower our guard. I dare not.
So, with everything we've talked about so far about mages, perhaps you can understand the mindset of some of the Templars. Mages are dangerous, and their powers can cause a lot of suffering, especially under the influence of a demon. These things aren't up for debate and are facts of Dragon Age, regardless of your opinion on mages. But the Templar mindset doesn't stop at caution. It jumps across to total paranoia, to the point where Templars would rather stab first and just not ask questions at all. Most of the Templars in Dragon Age carry a strong sense of apprehension towards mages, mostly because they're raised by the Chantry and indoctrinated with the belief that magic is a dangerous force put on this world to serve man, not rule over man. A lot of Templars also tend to have a strong hatred towards mages as well, whether it be due to trauma they faced at the hand of rogue mages that corrupts their opinion, or a more radicalized version of the Chantry's narrative. Not all mages are bad, and neither are all Templars. Across the course of the games, we meet Templars like Alistair in Dragon Age Origins, who are lovely, or slightly more complex Templars like Cullen, who appears in all three games. Cullen's mindset can change depending on your actions throughout the series, but at his core he isn't a bad person, nor is he necessarily a radical Templar. In Origins, he highly and desperately encourages you to kill the mages, believing they are too far gone for mercy, and whilst he isn't correct here, his plea comes from a place of desperation and absolute fear. The mages in Ferelden took over the tower and killed many of Cullen's brothers, people he'd known for years. When Cullen comes across to Kirkwall, he's a more stern character, hardened by his experiences in Ferelden's Circle Tower, but he's still a good person who wants to help. Cullen, and a small number of Templars in Dragon Age 2, do their best to prevent total slaughter, and Cullen isn't blind to the atrocities committed by the Templars, who use the justification that mages cannot be trusted. Now you might ask, what atrocities am I talking about? I've introduced the Templars and their extremist version of caution, but what exactly are they doing in Dragon Age 2 that's so bad? Well, they're killing mages, obviously, and most of the time they're doing it without valid reason, putting mages to the sword just in case they might become abominations or blood mages at some point. But they're not killing all the mages, you see. Some of them are sentenced to a fate worse than death. In the world of Dragon Age, there exists a thing called the Rite of Tranquility, a reprehensible action that strips a mage of their ability to connect with the Fade, and in turn also strips them of their magic. Templars use this as a preventative measure to stop mages from becoming too large of a threat to be stopped, or being possessed, or in the case of Dragon Age 2, they use it as a sick display of power they can lord over mages. However, the Rite of Tranquility doesn't only strip a mage of their power, it also strips them of their emotional center. They can no longer dream, they can no longer feel. They are husks of their former selves, being relegated to servants of the Circle, or in the case of Kirkwall, servants of the Templars. Being made tranquil is one of the worst possible fates a mage could face. likely worse than possession depending on which characters you choose to ask. Mages who have this fate forced upon them become less than people. They have the very thing that makes them who they are taken from them permanently. And in the case of the mages in Kirkwall, this is done very frequently, and very often without good reason. Another right the Templars hold over the mages is the right of annulment, arguably more threatening than tranquility.
As Knight Commander of Kirkwall, I hereby invoke the right of annulment. Every mage in the circle is to be executed, immediately!
The right of annulment gives the Templars the authority to terminate all the mages in a local circle without exception. We see this back in Origins, where one possible outcome of the mage storyline is the Templars enacting the right of annulment and purging the tower after it's taken over by blood mages. The right of annulment doesn't discriminate, however. If one group of mages is the problem, regardless of if they're in the minority or not, the entire circle is punished and executed. Dragon Age 2 has a direct example of this at the climax of the game, where the actions of a single mage sparks the right of annulment, even though that mage is an apostate and is not connected to Kirkwall's circle, a fact Grand Enchanter Orsino desperately tries to plead. The right of tranquility and the right of annulment, along with the protection of the Chantry, leaves the Templars with a position where they can completely control the mages, and kill or tranquilize those who dare to disagree. In Kirkwall, the Templars are led by Knight Commander Meredith, who also serves as the chief antagonist of the game.
You would cast us all as villains, but it is not so!
I know, and it breaks my heart to do it. But we must be vigilant. If you cannot tell me another way, do not brand me a tyrant.
Meredith is a deeply twisted and disturbed individual who treats mages like the very demons she's afraid will possess them. And while some of the mages do prove her right, and we'll talk about this next, most of the mages in Kirkwall only want fair treatment. Meredith is held at bay by the leader of the Chantry in Kirkwall, revered Mother Elfina, but Meredith will still seize power in Kirkwall regardless of Elfina's opinion. And when Elfina is no longer able to hold Meredith on a tight leash, which we'll also discuss soon, Meredith goes ballistic and calls the right of annulment into play, calling for the execution of all mages in Kirkwall. An act which she herself will lead through the streets. So now that we've talked about the mages and the Templars and just exactly what their issue with each other is in Dragon Age 2, I wanted to talk about one of the main companions you'll bring along in your journey, who is Anders, a mage who first appeared in Dragon Age Awakening.
There can be no peace. I removed the chance of compromise, because there is no compromise.
Anders is of course a mage, and more specifically an apostate. He despises the Templars and finds the circles that mages are forced to live in to be almost like a prison, which he isn't exactly wrong about. Anders is a rebel and will spend the entirety of both Awakening and Dragon Age 2 with an unshakable belief that the mages deserve fair treatment, which Anders believes cannot be achieved without tough decisions and strong actions. Another character from Awakening is the Spirit of Justice, a spirit from the Fade who possesses a Grey Warden to help you fight the Darkspawn. And after Awakening, Justice and Anders come to an agreement with each other that allows Justice to inhabit Anders' body, and the two become entwined inside Anders. Anders already desires justice for the mages, but having the actual Spirit of Justice inside him further solidifies his stance, and leads him to believe that he must take much more drastic actions to achieve his goals. Anders and Justice will flee the Grey Wardens and take refuge in Kirkwall prior to Dragon Age 2, where they help mages escape the city and generally do whatever they can to fight the oppression of Templars. During the events of Dragon Age 2, the Spirit of Justice will become more entwined with Anders, until the two are essentially one. They share the body, and in moments of stress during the Mage vs Templar conflict, Anders will lose control and Justice will take over the body, leading to some rash actions. Justice is not a bad spirit. In fact, Awakening shows Justice to have great morals and a strong sense of justice, obviously, for those who are suffering indignities. However, Anders' rage and desperation begins to corrupt Justice, and Anders' belief That justice cannot be achieved without suffering bleeds into Justice's own sense of morality, and unfortunately this isn't a good thing for the Spirit or Anders. Now, with Justice radicalized by Anders' emotions, we lose the spirit of justice and are introduced to something far more volatile: vengeance. Vengeance is the corruption of justice. It is justice pushed to the absolute extreme. And Anders is definitely one for extreme measures, as we'll talk about in a moment. When he loses control, Anders is even responsible for the murder of the very mages he is trying to save. This issue comes to a head in the climax of the game, where Anders' hope for a better future becomes so distorted that he plants a bomb in the Kirkwall Chantry, leaving it there until the Templars and Mages are finally no longer able to peacefully resolve their issues. During a pivotal moment in the finale of the game, where the Mages and the Templars come to a final standoff, Anders and Justice will trigger the explosion and the Chantry is blown apart, with revered Mother Elfina inside. Up until this point, as I mentioned above, Elfina has been trying to keep Meredith from going completely overboard, and is genuinely seeking peace for the Mages and the Templars. All this is rendered impossible when Anders destroys the Chantry, killing Elfina and many innocents inside it. This leads to Meredith calling forth the right of annulment and decreeing that all mages must die, something Orsino will desperately plead for her to step down, as it was not the Circle who did this, it was Anders. In his desperation for justice, Anders commits a vile act of terrorism and renders it impossible for the mages to come out of this situation peacefully.
I took a spirit into my soul and changed myself forever to achieve this. This is the justice all mages have awaited.
Did that spirit tell you to do this?
No. When we merged, he ceased to be. We are one now. I can no more ignore the injustice of the Circle than he could.
Anders is an extremely complex character, whose radical actions caused the death of countless civilians, Templars, and the very people he sought justice for, the Mages. In Anders' desperation for justice, he gives in to vengeance, and changes the course of Dragon Age's story permanently. There's no way around this storyline either. If you romance Anders and do everything you can to help him, he still bombs the Chantry. Only this time, he'll trick you into helping him doing it. When this questline begins, Anders will change his personality and outfit to represent a more darker version of the character. As Anders has twisted justice into vengeance, it has twisted him back as well. He is no longer the person you knew, and it is impossible to turn him away from this path. Anders accepts that he will die if he does this, a choice the game places in your hands. Does Anders deserve to die for his actions? He was doing something he genuinely believed to be right, something he believed to be unavoidable. Anders is under the unshakable impression that his sacrifice must be made for the mages to be free. The Chantry must be destroyed, and the mages must rise up against the Templars. The tricky thing is, in a sense, he is right. The mages must rise up against the oppression they face, or they will never be free, and they will never be treated justly unless they fight. But Anders is wrong to resort to sacrificing innocents, even someone who wanted to help the plight of the mages. Whether or not Anders realizes this himself, he no longer desires justice. He has gone too far down this path with a spirit from the Fade trapped inside his mind. Whatever noble intentions Anders began with are gone. He now desires vengeance for the oppression the mages face. He believes that those who wronged the mages must be punished. His focus is no longer on the freedom for mages, but instead on tearing down the system that oppressed them to begin with. And he is willing to destroy everything to achieve this and leave anyone in the rubble underneath it. It's a very difficult choice, and both points of view can be seen and understood, up until the point Anders loses sight of what is just and what is not. Now, he is the one in the wrong. He is just as bad as the Templars are. Anders' actions doom the mages of Kirkwall. Regardless of who you side with, the Circle does fall, and the numerous mages will die in the process. Potentially, even your sister Bethany, depending on your choices in the story up until this point. So, do you side with the Templars, who now have the justification they need to destroy the mages thanks to Anders? Or do you side with the very mages Anders wished to free, who are now being put to the sword due to Anders' own actions? Whichever side you choose, you are also faced with the choice of Anders' fate. Do you execute him for his actions? or force him to fight alongside you for one last time as retribution for his sins. Whatever you choose, your companions will not be pleased with Anders, and some of them will even call for Anders' execution themselves. Or some of them will be turned against the mages because of Anders' actions, such as Fenris, who in my playthrough turned on me and sided with the Templars, helping them terminate the mages as he believes it is what must be done after Anders' transgressions. In my playthrough, there was unfortunately no convincing Fenris otherwise, and our Hawk was forced to kill Fenris in this version of the story, because he absolutely refused to side with the mages after Anders' own actions. Dragon Age 2 tells a complex story with no true good ending. No matter what, there will be blood and there will be tragedy. My adventures in Kirkwall told a sad and desperate tale of a group of people being punished and locked up, even killed, simply because they were born with the ability to use magic. As the story develops, you begin to agree with Anders. The mages deserve justice for the constant suffering they are subjected to. But as the story heats up, that position is challenged by Anders himself, who has been championing the mages this entire time. The Templars are wrong, and their leader is a despicably cruel woman who is killing mages because they might one day turn evil. But her point is only reinforced and proven by the actions of the very man who is disputing her stance. Whilst Meredith is at no point justified in terminating the Circle, even the Grand Enchanter Orsino is forced to resort to blood magic at the very end to save himself, further proving Meredith's point, all because Anders wasn't capable of working on the bigger picture. Anders doomed the mages in the end due to his pursuit of justice. His own rage led to the justice he so desperately sought being twisted into vengeance, and he became the abomination the Templars were so certain mages would become. The very fact that Anders was desperate to prove wrong the entirety of the game. At the end of Dragon Age 2, there is no justice. Not for Anders, and not for the mages. There is only death and destruction, which in turn leads into a war between the mages and the Templars, sparked by the extremist actions of a mage who once believed in justice, but allowed vengeance to envelop his mind and take over his very being. Even at the end, seeing and understanding the chaos he caused, Anders still believes he is right. He still believes that this is necessary, even if it means the death of himself and many others, even those who would have helped him achieve his goals the entire time. So please, if you for some reason made it to the end of this video and haven't played Dragon Age 2, go give it a go. It isn't up to the standard of the previous game, but it still tells a devastating story of injustice and suffering that will leave you genuinely stuck trying to decide who is right and who is just seeking vengeance. If you've made it this far, I would like to thank you for watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, or if you didn't I guess, please do leave a like and share with any friends who might be interested in Dragon Age. Let me know down below your take on Anders and the struggle of the mages in Dragon Age 2 in the comments. And subscribe for more content in the future, as I look forward to talking more about Dragon Age in the very near future. Thank you for watching, and peace out.